In 1942, the Allied powers launched an aerial bombing campaign that targeted the German cities. Historian Randel Hansen writes in Fire and Fury, "During the Second World War, Allied air forces dropped nearly 2 million tons of bombs on Germany, destroying some 60 cities and killing more than 500,000 German citizens. Hitler needed a miracle, something special to keep morale high among the German citizens and soldiers. He went to his team of nerds and suddenly it appeared as if the future of Europe and Western civilization itself might hinge upon the work of a small, isolated band of nerdy scientists led by this guy. Hey you nerds, I want a vengeance weapon to retaliate. I want a missile." "Yes, mein Führer. Yes, mein Führer. Yes, mein Führer." Just out of curiosity, why do you need it for?" "What do you mean, why?" "So that I can blow up British cities. It's not a competition, but I also want to kill their innocent civilians like they are killing ours." Anyway, I'm just gonna pretend I did not hear that. I'm doing it for science. The German military wanted to use von Braun's knowledge for building weapons of mass destruction. Under von Braun's leadership, the scribblings and sketches of poor Russian scientist Tasilkovsky and the prototypes of Robert Goddard became the vengeance weapon, the V2 rocket. An interesting backstory here. Nearly 50 years before Hitler's Nazi Germany funded scientists to build long-range missiles, this poor Russian scientist had already worked out the theoretical basis for launching rockets into space. Decades before cars went mainstream, in the era when people were using horse carts for city-to-city travel, Konstantin Tasilkovsky was dreaming about going to the moon and Mars. His guiding philosophy was simple: the Earth is the cradle of humanity, but mankind cannot stay in the cradle forever. Our planet is too small for such a multitude of emotions and sensations that we are experiencing. Man must explore this outer space where life can spread out and flourish. The Earth is a launching pad. We must leave it and turn our eyes to the stars." Without any help from scientific community, he figured out the mathematics, physics and mechanics of rockets. He calculated the speed necessary for a rocket to escape the gravity of Earth. In 1903, he published his famous rocket equation, which allows one to determine the maximum velocity of a rocket when given its weight and fuel supply. His equation made it clear that the rocket needs enormous amounts of fuel to leave the Earth and to get an extra boost in speed. But unfortunately, the world was not ready for his ideas. For all his hard work, he got nothing in return except ridicule and humiliation. He lived and died in absolute poverty. Then came USA's Robert Goddard, who built working prototypes based on Tasilkovsky's work. He figured out what kind of fuel to use, built multi-stage rockets to increase their range and efficiency, and invented gyroscope to keep rockets on target. He kept trying to convince the US military to provide funds, but got nothing from them. Back to World War II. Unlike Robert Goddard and Tasilkovsky, von Braun got heavy funding from the German military. Nothing motivates humanity like war. Von Braun's V2 rocket shattered all the past achievements in terms of speed and range for a rocket. It was the first long-range guided ballistic missile and was the first rocket to break the sound barrier. And most impressively, it was the first rocket ever to leave the atmosphere's boundary and enter outer space. But unfortunately, this revolutionary weapon was only used for terrorizing London and blowing up entire city blocks.
The 30th of April, 1945.
Mein Führer, enemies at our gates. We have lost the war. I know just the right thing to do, as I always do. I'm just gonna put a bullet in my head. World War II ended with Hitler's suicide. But what happened to those V2 rockets that were stocked up in Germany? Hey, look who is here. The bombers of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the slayers of thousands of innocent Japanese civilians. Are you done? Just give them half of everything, including those stupid rockets. The Soviet Union and the USA sent those missiles to their respective countries so that scientists can study them, reverse engineer them and build the new ones. Once the war was over, both the Americans and the Soviets wanted to harness the technological prowess of the Nazi Germany. During the Cold War, both countries competed to make rapid technological advancements for their armies. Between them, there was stiff competition even in getting hold of the sophisticated technological equipment built in Nazi Germany. Once the equipment, weapons, instruments, machines were acquired, the question of what to do with the highly skilled and trained people who designed it all remained. On the one hand, the world knew about the scientists' Nazi past, but on the other hand, they were considered too skilled to be left behind to be punished for their crimes. On this issue, the journalist Annie Jacobsen in her book Operation Paperclip wrote, "The US government secretly decided that the value of these former Nazis' knowledge outweighed their crimes, and they began a covert operation codenamed Paperclip to allow them to work in the US without the public's full knowledge." Under Operation Paperclip, V2 rockets and more than 1600 German scientists, engineers and technicians were taken from former Nazi Germany to the US for building rockets.
Hey Nazis, in the name of your scientific knowledge, we absolve you from all of your war crimes and proclaim you innocent. Of course, as long as you stay loyal and keep working for us.
During the Cold War, the entire US and Soviet Union arsenals were based on modifying the V2 rockets. Remember the guy behind the success of V2 rockets, von Braun? He, with his 100 assistants, decided to join hands with the USA. The NASA History series under the selected documents in the history of US civil space program revealed how the rocket scientists from Nazi Germany were transferred to the US. In the journal Exploring the Unknown, it is clearly stated that on May 2, 1945, Werner von Braun, Dornberger, and 116 other rocket specialists surrendered to American officials in the Austrian Tyrol town of Riot, just south of Bavaria. A few months later, they were taken to the US along with about 100 V2 rockets, many rocket components, and truckloads of scientific documents. This rocket team formed the foundation of the US's progress in missile and rocket development for several decades to come. Kurt H. Debus, a German V2 rocket scientist under Nazi rule, was made the first director of NASA's John F. Kennedy Center. Similar things happened with many other Nazi scientists who later gained prominent positions in highly reputed institutions in the US. In stark contrast, the Soviets did not allow any captured Nazi scientists to take part in their space program or any other institution. They were just kept for the extraction of information they possessed about rocket science and missile technology. Once they revealed whatever they knew, they were deported back to West Germany. One of the primary goals for both the United States and the Soviet Union was to launch the first artificial satellite. Even though the Soviet Union did not let Nazi scientists actively participate in their space program, it outperformed Americans and became the first ever country to send artificial satellite into space. And this is how Americans reacted.
Today, a new moon is in the sky, a 23-inch metal sphere placed in orbit by a Russian rocket.
The reaction was one of astonishment and concern, for it was now known that a potential enemy was at least temporarily ahead in developing means for space travel.
Since then, we have sent more than 8,000 satellites to space. Scientists of the 21st century are talking about making humans a multiplanetary species, establishing a permanent moon base, colonizing Mars and mining the moon. But it all started as a mad dictator's project that was all about causing mass destruction and killing innocent people. It's funny how science works. All of humanity's inventions are nothing but an interconnected web of interdependent inventions. One invention often leads to the development of another, as researchers use the knowledge gained from one breakthrough to solve other problems. For example, the invention of the transistor in 1947 paved the way for the development of computers, which in turn allowed for the creation of the internet. Building on the knowledge of previous generations is what makes us humans an exceptional species. Watch my documentaries on the history of rockets and why humans dominate the planet Earth. Treat yourself to an exciting and informative viewing experience that sheds light on the ingenuity and perseverance of human beings throughout history.